Hello. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. We're apparently all in a predicament here. So it appears, hence the word apparently, which, as you may have noticed, crops up a lot in these conversations. Here in the world, which is where we think we are, if you're just tuning in, you most certainly understood that correctly. We're not here. Why? There is no world. That's the central teaching of A Course in Miracles. And Jesus chooses to punctuate that sentence with an exclamation point, which we put at the end of sentences for emphasis, quite deliberately. So we're perfectly at home in God, where we have always been, and this supposed separation from Him, this supposed separation, again, supposed, apparent, not real, separation from our source never, ever, in fact, took place. It is impossible. There is only perfect oneness, in which we're all included, not as separate little beings, separate little things running around, but as part of the all capital A. Now, we're all invited to let that sink in. And of course, to the extent that you feel able to do so today. Some days we find ourselves much more receptive to the message of the Holy Spirit than other days, which is par for the course. It's quite normal here. Because we're running up against a predicament while we think we're individual self sustaining survival units. In other words, while we think we're human beings. Again, implicit in that message, it's not who we really are. This course tells it like it is, which does not mean that we're going to receive it happily. And we're going to talk about this. It doesn't mean that you're going to jump for joy to learn that the world is an illusion. It's a dream. The physical body is not who you are, which you do know. You do know that. I know that you know that, or you would not be interested in spirituality at all. You would never, ever have responded to the call of our inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, to awaken. And here you are. You've not only heard the call, and many times, I'm sure, but you've also responded to it. Thank you. On behalf of every single living thing. Very important. Here you are. Doesn't mean that these messages will be received on any given day with adoration, with glee, and with happy jumps and leaps for joy. Oh, there's no world. You may end up having a completely different reaction to that, which is perfectly fine and it's perfectly normal because we've all had those reactions. This course, we would call it here in the world, using our labels and terminology, radical, extraordinarily so. It aims to turn our entire thought system right side up. Notice I did not say upside down. Our thought system is upside down. We're turning it right side up. You may find that helpful. So, as we go through the text of the course, we've now arrived at chapter 21, section 1. It's a very beautiful, really gorgeously written section of the text where it talks quite a lot in the first few paragraphs about the difference for our learning purposes between judgment and vision. So, what are we talking about here? Judgment is what we go through life and do all of the time, where we attempt to order and orchestrate and manipulate and control all compound phenomena. And by that, I mean everything in the world, from our own behavior to our own thoughts to what appears to be outside of us, other people's behavior, our job situations, our relationship situations. We attempt to manipulate, order, and control everything according to our own individual, self centered, ego driven wishes. And we pretend to be surprised when it blows up in our face, which it always does, whether this happens instantly, as we all know frequently occurs, or whether this misfortune, this blowing up in our face of our best laid plans, yeah, that may take some time. Things may appear to work on the surface, yet they don't always work for long. And in any event, they don't last. Judgment is attempting to run off and decide and order and control everything ourselves with our own individual self through our own lens. It is not a surprise that there's such conflict in the world because everybody else appears to be doing the same thing. Through their own lens, they're attempting to manipulate, order, and control all compound phenomena. We're doing the same thing. So when these attempts to manipulate, order, and control actually align with somebody else's, we call them a friend and an ally. And when they don't align, well, voila. Here we all appear to be frustrated, perhaps deeply unhappy, anxious, depressed, sad, angry. No, no, any number of things. We don't see things as they really are. And what reality, what everything really looks like is unknown to us while we do not see them. When we exercise our judgment of the ego, we don't see. We're shown here and we're taught here and we're presented here with an idea that's like all of the ideas in the course, quite simple. We introduce all the complications ourselves when we tell ourselves we can't do it because it's too hard, which, when we think about it, we do in every arena of life. The simplicity of this is we have a choice, one choice right now in the present moment. There are exactly two options. We have learned, and you have learned, that you cannot have both at the same time and expect awakening. You cannot have both love and hatred, love and fear at the same time and expect the peace of God. You've learned through constant suffering that it's folly to do so, and you don't have to. You don't have to. You have the power to choose right now. We all do. No one can take that away from us. We can only not exercise it. That's a choice. We still are making a choice if we choose not to exercise this power or if we choose to deny it, which you can. People do. They think they're a victim of the world. Not everybody has been there. We've all gone there in our own mind, thinking that the world is coming at us fast and furious and we better duck or we better do our best to slog through and adapt because it's coming at us hard and fast. We can all relate to that. There is a difference, a profound difference here, presented in A Course in Miracles for our learning purposes between judgment and vision. Vision is the vision of Christ, the Son of God, singular, in which all are included. Again, not as individual self-sustaining survival units, but as part of the all. God is the creator. God extends himself. Like extends like. Go there, go there. Do it again. Hmm? There is a profound difference, in fact, between judgment and vision. Vision is the vision of the Holy Spirit. We are learning here, to the extent that we allow ourselves to do so, we're learning to look at all of this with the Holy Spirit. We're learning to see as our inner teacher sees, vision, which is happy. Judgment is unhappy. It's more of the same. Conflict, guilt, fear, rage, abject rage and hatred, suffering and pain, which none of us really deep down wants. Yet we choose it again and again, very, very often without realizing it. Which is why spiritual practices, all of them, are so repetitive because we need these constant reminders as adult learners. And you may certainly call all of us stubborn adult learners. If we weren't stubborn, we'd all be awakened and this conversation would never appear to be necessary. Simply wouldn't. Judgment is painful. And here in the world, when we judge, as we judge, we learn through pain. We tell ourselves that we're adapting to life. We're adapting to an economic system. We're adapting to a system of governance and a political system. We're adapting to a social system. We're adapting because life appears to be coming at us fast, furious, very quickly. So we learn as we judge, thinking we're individuals, we learn through pain, and that is not necessary. You don't have to learn through pain. You could learn happily, peacefully, and joyfully instead. And we're not yet a happy learner, are we? Chapter 21, Section 1, Paragraph 3. We're not yet happy learners because we're not yet convinced that vision gives us more than judgment. We're not yet convinced that the Holy Spirit gives us more than the ego. We're not yet convinced that light gives us more than darkness. Though it sounds pretty obvious here on a video, we're not yet convinced of this. So we're not yet a happy learner. You do not have to continue to learn purely through pain and suffering. You could choose right now in the present moment to learn with the Holy Spirit instead. And it is this invitation that is a constant thread in this course, to learn with your inner teacher. And here we learn that a critical part of all of this is learning to relax and trust the guidance of the Holy Spirit. We are not yet happy learners because we have not yet learned to relax and trust. Another way of putting that, we have not allowed ourselves to relax and trust. We have not allowed ourselves to go there. Why? Because we're not yet convinced that following the Holy Spirit will give us more than following the ego. How do we become convinced? Through our own experience. Pixelated image can say whatever it wants. You are the one that will put it into practice. This is true of all of us. This is how we really learn. If you wish fully to be convinced that vision gives you far more than judgment, relax and trust the guidance of your inner teacher. And if you're not sure how to do it or what to do, that's perfectly fine. Simply ask. You don't have to do it verbally, though you could choose to. That's fine. It's all in our mind, and we just simply ask. Here's something that is very beautiful and very true. And, well, as we get carried away in the stream of excess activity and frustration in human life, or what we think of as human life, we just, it's very easy for us to lose sight of this. So we ask. And if this means carving out a few seconds, which is all it takes, of space, do that. Do as you're called to do here. Because the Holy Spirit speaks to us constantly. How does this appear in many different ways? So, people frequently ask, and it's an excellent, excellent question, how do I know if I'm actually making what we call progress? Well, first of all, each and every one of us must be honest with ourselves. Are we really forgiving? Are we really doing the course? Our own experience is how we learn the best. And why would this be? Our experience shows us that these ideas are true. It demonstrates to us if you truly and honestly do the course You may very soon, or perhaps in the future, we don't know when, you may begin to see things differently. And if you persist at it, you will see things differently. A good measuring stick is the following. Whatever your spiritual practice looks like, and however long you've been doing it, in other words, whatever length of time you've been doing it, whether it's 15 minutes or 15 years or more than that or anything in between, something that you may find helpful is to think of who you were at the outset when you began this practice. If it's the practice of true forgiveness with the Holy Spirit, with Jesus, with our inner teacher here in A Course in Miracles, it's that. If it's something else, let it be something else. Who were you? Where were you in your mind? What was life like for you when you started in the mind? How is it different now? After your practical application, and again, only you'll know if you're really putting this course into practical application. That is how we learn. It works. I mean, don't take it from pixelated image. Pixelated image has experienced that it works. Perhaps you have too. And if you have not, this is how you do it. And if you have, this is how we continue to do it because the ego still pops up. Most certainly. We put it into practice. So if you've been doing your practice, whatever it is, for a while, what were you like then? What are you like now? If there is a person or an event or a situation that used to bother you back at the beginning a lot, how does that impact you now if the same person does the same thing? If the same group of people indulge in what seems to be the same behavior, or worse, or more egregious, or louder, bigger, faster, more chaotic, how does that impact you now? It can be useful, very, very useful, and hopefully inspirational to just take a look. How have you changed? Do the same things bother you? Does the same person bother you? Does the same person's same behavior, which they may still be engaged in, even after a period of years or decades, does that still bother you? Or do you even notice? How does it impact you? What's the difference? This can be a very, very handy gauge. And we need these sometimes on the path, don't we? Because we all have days where it feels like this is just too lofty, right? It feels like it's too lofty, and well, he can do it, she can do it, but me, mm-mm. No, we all have those days. So we all need these moments of checking in and encouragement, because this is how we learn from experience that when you give over all situations in life to the Holy Spirit, you do not see things the same way. So we're all invited to learn with the Holy Spirit and become what the Course refers to as happy learners. You can learn happy and joyful lessons. They don't have to be painful. And we can all make this choice. If we decide, no, we can't make that choice, well, we chose. We just made the choice. So we do know the choice that is happy and the option that's unhappy. So we don't have to continue to choose the unhappy option. So, as always, here, my hope is that you're inspired to put these ideas into practice because I can tell you from experience, that's how we really learn. When the Course insists on that, it is not just talking a bunch of nonsense. That's how we really learn through experience. Now, it can be very, very useful to gain some understanding with the intellectual thinking mind of all of these ideas. I mean, people often say this course doesn't make any sense. Perhaps you've said the same. I mean, people look at, for example, the workbook for students, the first few lessons, nothing I see on this street means anything, and go, what? And maybe you can relate to that. It's worth understanding that we introduce all the complications ourselves. And the ego doesn't like to hear this. The reason that we may find this course difficult to learn is because we're resistant to learning it. Understand this too. All resistance is of the ego, and expect resistance on the spiritual path. I mean, we can all expect it. We all have help along the way. First and foremost, the help of our inner teacher's guidance. And by the way, call the Holy Spirit whatever you want to call it. I often use the gender neutral pronoun it to refer to the Holy Spirit because it's not a person, it's not a man, it's not a woman. Yes, the Course uses the masculine pronouns he and him to refer to the Holy Spirit and God as a simple matter of convention. God's not a human being either, for which we can all be deeply grateful. For sure. Now, along the way, questions are bound to arise, and I invite them. You're more than welcome to pose any questions that you may have here about spirituality in general, about the spiritual path, or about A Course in Miracles specifically. You don't have to be a course student in order to benefit from these discussions. And many of you are, which is absolutely fine. You don't have to be an experienced student to benefit from these discussions. You don't have to be a beginning student to benefit from these discussions. Wherever you appear to find yourself on your walk, on your journey, on your spiritual path, there's always a message here from the Holy Spirit for you. And having watched up to this point, which is very nearly the end, you'll have heard that message by now, and perhaps more than one. Questions are more than welcome. And please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you to those of you who have recently done that. The prompt is over here in the corner of your screen. Just go ahead and click that. You'll be invited to join us. And we have several of these discussions each week because spirituality requires that repetition. And we're adult learners. And yes, you're welcome to insert the adjective stubborn to modify adult learners because it kind of goes with the territory, doesn't it? Especially when we're turning our entire thought system right side up. So questions are more than welcome. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you all again very soon.